Hey, everybody. Mark and I have over 20 years of experience as therapists and as addicts in long-term successful recovery. We know better than anyone what works and what doesn't to break out of porn and sex addiction, heal betrayal trauma, and reclaim your relationship.
And we've poured all of our personal and professional recovery and healing experience into a first-of-its-kind program for addicts, spouses, and couples. We call it Dare to Connect.
At least 4 times every week, we engage with you in real time, in the trenches, giving you the knowledge and the tools to take back your life and relationship.
Whatever else you've done on your journey for healing and recovery, you've never done anything like this.
Mark and I, we've made all the mistakes, so you don't have to. Don't reinvent the wheel.
We all know tomorrow never comes. Look, don't wait one more day to change. Claim your free 2-week trial today at daretoconnectnow.com.
Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSC Squared Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Mark and Steve on the PBSC podcast. This is episode 245. That's a nice ring to it. 245.
Edging to the big 250, slowly but surely.
Oh, that's right. This title, this is such a telling title. Our hearts go out title to both the partner and the addict in recovery, but with his history of dishonesty. Should I just trust that my partner's relationship with an attractive coworker is, quote, all business?
Dun, dun, dun.
How many times have we heard that one a lot? And
yes,
very legitimate from the standpoint of a betrayed partner with an addict with a history of dishonesty. We're going to talk more about that. But let me read real quick what she sent into us at PBSC. My husband is starting a new position within his company where he will be working very closely with this woman. We'll talk about this woman instead of just a woman. She is highly attractive and the only female in the male-dominated company they work in. He has admitted a few times that blank, we took out the name, is beautiful, smart, and is going to go far in the company. While I've never been concerned he's going to cheat on me with her or anyone else, I have a lot of mixed feelings about them working so closely together. I'm scared that he is fantasizing about her, masturbating to her, and lying to me about it, like he has lied to me about everything else so far. I asked him bluntly about this, and he laughed at me and told me that, quote, he only has eyes for me. Obviously, we're married. He has some pretty obvious, quote, tells when he's lying, and I'm almost certain he is in this case. How can I, as the spouse, learn to, and she has in parentheses, I guess, just be okay with it and trust that work relationships are just that, work relationships? Yeah.
difficult scenario. And we do run into this, quite a bit. And we know many of you can relate. We've got a situation, right? The family income, right, is tied to what is becoming a very triggering situation, right? There's a background or a history of, now we'll just say right up front, and you're going to hear us mention this again, this is a little bit hard to go off of today simply because in terms of his history or background with acting out, we just have the one line, right? He has lied to me about everything else so far. So
we don't
she's
know
kind
what
of
everything
implying.
else is.
Yeah, we don't know what that
We're
is. We don't know the
assuming because
history.
she's here at the PBSE podcast. It seems that he has some sort of pornography or sexual addiction past. I would imagine that's why she's here asking us, but we don't know any details.
Correct. Yeah. And so, and it is important, right at the gate, we can definitely hear her hesitation, her fear, which makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
So from what we can gather, right, anytime there's a history of lying and betrayal trauma, there always are going to be, there's going to be a whole set of triggers, or in and of itself, just the background can be a huge trigger to many other symptoms, right, for
Yes.
partners.
Yes.
And it's understandable because the trust has been legitimately broken. There's a background history with, with whatever has gone on here, right? But it has involved a breach of trust or multiple breaches of trust. And of course, that's going to be crazy hard. As we tell our subscribers on Dare to Connect and all of you all the time, no partner deserves this, right? Partners are 100 when it comes to partners bring their own set of strengths and weaknesses to the table, just like an addict does. And so marriages are complicated. But when it comes to the betrayal itself, no partner signs up for this thing and says, yeah, this sounds great. This sounds like a plan. I can't wait to have, trust issues in my relationship. I can't wait to be questioning you when you go to work or go to the store or go do whatever, right?
Yeah,
These are all,
the whole time he was courting me and dating me and we were engaged and we got married, he always said, I'm going to lie to you once we're in this relationship permanently. So just expect it.
yeah, absolutely,
Right.
right? Not
Doesn't,
something any of you consented to. And
no.
and again, going off the one line, it sounds like there is at least a perceived, if not real, strong pattern of this deception, minimizing, possibly gaslighting, other things, right? That's gone on for quite some time.
Yeah.
And so, just by way of reminder, for those who've listened to this our podcast before or in our Dare to Connect program, this will not be unfamiliar. But there's a whole list of symptoms, right, that commonly accompany betrayal trauma and the initial responses, everything from hypervigilance to seeking for guarantees. We probably should talk about that one for a second because that's going to be something we'll talk about a little bit more here. It's very common following betrayal, right, for a partner to want to do two things. One, know everything,
Yes.
right? I was lied to about X, Y, or Z. And so now I need to know everything from A to Z and A.1, A.2, A.3, all the in-betweens. And that comes from that deep-rooted place of safety came from a lack of not knowing, therefore safety will come now from knowing, right?
And I thought I knew who I chose when I agreed to
Yeah.
form a coupleship with you. Now I don't know that I know who you are at all. So who am I choosing? And that naturally is going to throw you into a big, giant sense of instability in your life. Who is this? Who am I married to? Right? Um, Feeling symptoms of betrayal trauma, now suddenly going into a feeling, very legitimate feeling of competition or comparison with this highly attractive woman at work. She says, I'm pretty sure he's lying. So now we get into where betrayed partners struggle with this horrible situation where they'd start to wonder if their intuition or their gut is correct. Right?
Yeah.
What do I know? What do I not know? Right? And
Yeah.
a whole host of other betrayal trauma symptoms. Those are just a few.
For sure. Well, and she has every right, right? Understandably so, to be skeptical, be guarded, be suspicious.
Yes.
And so let's tackle the question because this is, I mean, it's a difficult dynamic, right? But just hitting it head on, quoting from her submission, how can I, as a spouse, learn to, I guess, as Mark said, just be okay with it and trust that work relationships are just that, work relationships? We actually this a similar discussion came up last week on our Dare to Connect show. And we got really into the thick of it. Again, daretoconnectnow.com. If you want to hear that, we had a very raw and real discussion with partners last week about that. It's on the recording. You can grab your 2-week trial at daretoconnectnow.com. We'd love to have you come join us. But I'm going to give you the same answer that I started that whole discussion off last week.
2 words.
In answer to that, right? How can I, as a spouse, learn to trust and just that these are just appropriate relationships? 2 words. You shouldn't.
Exactly.
You shouldn't.
No.
Right? Given the background, given the history, and let's explain that here. Given the background, because every addict listening to this probably is sweating bullets now, right? Given the background, as we talked last week again in D2C, me speaking as an addict to all the addicts listening, we caused this.
We did.
You caused this. Whatever your situation is, whatever level of deception or infidelity or betrayal was involved in this, this is a situation of our making, right? And at the end of the day, it would not only be unrealistic to expect a spouse to simply just trust us again, that would be downright unhealthy. I would never look a partner in the eye in my office, given a background or elongated history of betrayal, and just say, well, second time's the charm, right? Or 10th time's the charm. Like let's just move forward.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
I did that before. I don't do that anymore. Right. There was I'm trying to remember a card. I think it was Jungle Book way back when it's the snake that's trying to lure him in. Trust me, just trust me, right?
That sounds eerily appropriate. Yes,
Well, one of the
absolutely.
things that really jumped out at Steve, as you and I talked about this before we did this podcast. One of the things that, and again, we don't have a lot of details, but this sounded so familiar. And in my relationship, and I know yours as well, Steve, it seems like there has not been a really transparent, put it all out on the table, talk about the elephant in the room discussion, dialogue, right? Because one of the things we would highly recommend to her is that she, on her own side of the street, transparently explore all of her feelings about this, think it clearly through, write down all of the things that she's discovering as she does this privately, and then share that all with him. Right? Critical part of this, getting the transparency and the authenticity out on the table. And you always, I love how you always put a really important caveat to that. In whatever way or setting or medium is safe for her, which for some people we work with, that means written communication because face-to-face isn't safe, or it goes volatile or angry, or he shuts down or whatever it is. So whatever way it is for her to do that safely, this all needs to come out. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have to shift the dynamic in this relationship, and it makes sense why you're there, right? We're not gonna. It makes total sense when the minute trust diminishes in a relationship, disclosure, not formal disclosure, but disclosure, right? Meaning the exchange of ideas is the next thing that goes out the window,
Yeah.
right? It leaves right along with it. We immediately, as human beings, we pull back in any relationship where trust has been violated. I got hurt in part because I exposed pieces of myself to you. I got burned. So now I'm pulling back.
Right.
Right.
Which is wise, right? And what I saw in her description, this is something I would have done. And probably I did. His response to her trying to be transparent and vulnerable and bring her stuff out into the open was, well, what does he say here? He laughed at her and told her, I only have eyes for you. Obviously, we're married. And what my expectation would have been back in my addiction days was, well, that'll settle it. Now we don't have to talk about anything uncomfortable. I avoided that bullet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and who knows? We know so little about this. He may not have even meant it in this way, in the way I'm going to describe, right? He may have just been trying to assuage her and say, of course I'm committed to you. However, for many spouses, how that's going to be interpreted as, especially with a background of trauma, it's going to be
Yes.
interpreted as gaslighting.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean? What are you talking about? Right? That what you're seeing, you're seeing fire where there's no fire. Of course, that's not even a possibility, right? It's almost calling into question, why would you even think that way? Well, because you've lied to me before 6 ways to Sunday. That's why.
Well, and let's be really clear. We don't know, but this guy might actually be really genuine and sincere about his response.
Totally.
Well, of course I
Totally.
only have eyes for you, right? We're married.
Yep.
He might think, wow, I can't believe you even thought that. Now, what he's missing is how often do we say this isn't about facts, right? From his standpoint, this is about her feelings, his history, and him leaning in to come into the place of empathy and stand shoulder to shoulder to really want to genuinely understand. I wonder why she's coming at it this way. Please tell me more. I want to really be here and listen to come to a place of understanding. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Because what is she saying underneath the statement? I'm scared.
Yeah.
And he's simply just saying, well, you shouldn't be.
Right.
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 But again, that doesn't match up with the background, but two, that wouldn't be a healthy response anyway. Right. Because one thing that we talk about often in Dare to Connect is the idea that, right, when the more an intimate and relationship becomes, the less facts matter on the outset of a dialogue. Now, what do we mean by outset? Obviously, facts always have a place in any relationship, and they are valid. But another way to put that is the more intimate relationship becomes, the more feelings take precedence because they are what opened the door to connection.
Right.
Right.
I'm intimacy. Into me you see. Into you I see. I'm about to show my whole self to you, a really vulnerable, scared, suspicious, worried self. And I hope that you'll lean in and stay with me long enough to see that part of me, unless immediately taking it personal and going to defensiveness, which shuts down our whole dialogue, and thus the intimacy into me you see just went out the window. Right? Regardless of whether it's factual or not fact. I had a really hard time with this for a lot of my marriage. Every time my wife would start to express vulnerable, authentic feelings, speaking her truth, not the truth necessarily, but hers, I immediately went defensive fast. My walls would go up. You're falsely accusing me, and I would immediately shut down. And one of the things we talked about, for this guy from his side of the street is he accessing resources, support, education to develop the skills that are needed to be able to hear her, process what she's saying, connect with her, validate her and her concerns in a vulnerable way? Does he have those skills? Does he even know what they are? Does he even think it's necessary to even do so? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and so kind of if we were to break this down, because you can tell we're a little, just slightly passionate about this, everybody. If we were to break this down, right, that there are a couple of things that need to happen here, right? He, or first of all, she, for her on the individual side, this is going to involve a lot of figuring out and developing out skill sets around transparently exploring, thinking out, and then sharing concerns, feelings, and emotions with him. Here's what's going on with me. Here's what's underneath these other feelings. Here's why I'm feeling these things, as well as conveying the questions or the needs that she has around it. Right. And that needs to happen in whatever medium is going to be safe for her. For some relationships, that may be just a one-on-one sit down with each other, and that can happen and be very productive. For most of the couples, I would say we work with, they're probably at least on the outset of a dialogue like that. It's probably going to be one step walk back. Maybe we start that off with we set up the conversation for success. We don't just pop that on the fly. Hey, hon, here's what's for dinner. This is what we're doing. Here's the plans for the weekend. Oh, and by the way, I'm really having a hard time trusting you and your new partner at work. Anyway, can we talk about that? Right? It's maybe we set it up in advance. Maybe we say, hey, can we sit down? I've got something important to bring up, whatever. But then we can even walk that back further. Maybe we need to do that in a therapist's office.
Yes.
Maybe it happens through email or through text to start off the dialogue so that we can set ourselves up for success. And the reasons why that might be needed are because of what we're going to talk about with the addict partner here and why that could be problematic, right? Mark, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, and again, we don't know what the history has been with him being dishonest, or whether it appears that it's probably pornography or sexual addiction related, betrayal trauma related. Is he going to try to quote, go this alone and just try to use, techniques like he did? Hey, I only have eyes for you. We're married, right? End of discussion. Or is he going to go now, regardless of the reasons, but simply for the fact that she's in crisis? Is he going to go get the support he needs? Connect up with a support group? Does he need a therapist or a sponsor? Has he got a daily renewal or accountability partner that he's bouncing stuff off of? Hey, what's been your experience with your partner? You've ever faced anything like this? What did you do? Right? Is he journaling? Is he working through what he's feeling and why? Right? All of these things that we're hoping he's willing to come to the table with because he cares about this person. Right? And like you said, he needs to be prepared, just like she needs to be prepared to come to talk to him about this. He needs to be prepared with his own trigger management. Right? This is a big trigger for a guy, right? Hey,
yes,
we're working with this person at work. Here's my fears, and right away, it's a trigger for us as guys, and we get defensive or try to shut it down. Is he willing to do his work in advance so that he can come to the table for this dialogue? And what I like to say is he in a receiving mode and genuine curiosity mode, as opposed to a reactive mode. Right? And we're in the thick of this in Dare to Connect right now.
Yeah, literally right now.
We just spent a whole month on triggers, both from the addict and recovery side and the betrayed partner side. What are triggers? Where do they come from? What do they look and feel like? How do you prepare yourself to face triggers? How do you manage them in the emergency of the moment? We've just done a whole month on that. So you can tell this is why we're so passionate about it. Right.
In fact, we talked to addicts just this morning, not 3 hours ago, about this whole process of utilizing skill sets and dealing with triggers in real time. Last week was all about self-care, right? And engaging with those things in advance. This week we're tackling on using those in real time when you're having a discussion like this with your partner.
Exactly.
When you hear hard information, because it's all about guys being, I mean, and every guy listening to this in a vulnerable way, you know, the struggles tied to this, right? Our shame comes out, our lack of self-worth, our self-confidence comes out. For me, it was a full expression of the Brene Brown quote of, you know, the difference between being offended by something versus being enraged by something is the degree to which we secretly believe the thing that's being said, right? When Brittany would bring difficult, hard concerns to Steve, and she would start hitting on stuff that I really was speaking to my shame, right? Was speaking to my lack of self. She wasn't demeaning me, but she was calling into question, hey, this is hurting me or this is painful. And it spoke to those things that I knew about myself. Mark talked about how he would shut down. I was the polar opposite. I would go ballistic. I would become very combative, very resistant, right?
Well, because what's the thing that, and I'm going to say this because I'm thinking of it, and if I don't say it now, I'll forget. One of the things that was so difficult but absolutely invaluable that was presented to me by some early mentors and colleagues. I'm gonna give the phrase, and I'm gonna kind of let people listening kind of gel on this for a minute. Whenever our partner comes to us with one of these kinds of situations, if we can use our skills and tools to hit the pause button and step back and just observe for a minute, rather than automatically getting defensive because we're being falsely accused or it's triggering all our shame because we are doing a lot of things that are being brought up, whatever the reason is, this is a bid for connection. It doesn't necessarily feel like it or sound like it, but I promise when a partner comes to you with these concerns and fears, what are they saying? I want to connect with you because you're my partner, and I want this to be a team effort, and I really need to connect with you and have you hear me. I want to be close to you in this moment. I used to interpret it as this is a disconnection, and I need to distance myself from my wife with her bringing this up. For her, it was just the opposite. Please don't run. Please don't hide. Please don't get angry. Please connect. This is a bid for connection with you, Mark. I hope guys listening will realize that's what this is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, guys, we hope that you'll consider getting yourselves over to Dare to Connect if this is something that resonates with you. Because again, we're talking about this stuff in real time. We have the last 3 weeks worth of recordings on this subject available right now for instant review. We'd love to have you come join us at daretoconnectnow.com.
Yeah.
Well, situations like this, right? They definitely point towards bigger issues. If we look at the coupleship for a minute, we talked about him, we've talked about her. So let's look at the bigger picture here, right? And this is something that Mark brought up as we were producing, right? This definitely, there in recovery, there are the battlegrounds, and then there's the war.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
there are these different battlefronts that we come up against.
This was a battleground issue, right? Or what we might call a very painful symptom. So it's not real, but it's more on the surface, and it's saying there's a lot of stuff under here.
Well, and it's important to identify that, because it would be very easy for many coupleships to make the mistake of saying, well, the problem here is the fact that you work with women, right? So we need to get you in an all-male job. Or the problem is right, and oftentimes we can target, and it's not to say that sometimes it's not to say that there may not be room for intervention in those types of areas to create immediate safety in the short term, as long as we clearly understand and everybody's on board with the idea that that is not the issue. Okay.
Right. Because we should say clearly, Steve, you and I both had clients where in some cases a change of job was absolutely needed.
And it was helpful for a variety of reasons, right?
Yeah.
But it would not be the standalone kind of issue here, right?
No.
The real issue here, this if it wasn't this woman, it would be another woman. right? If it wasn't a woman at work, it would be a woman at the store or somebody that he met at church or whatever the case would be. What this is hitting on is the bigger is part of the bigger battleground for this coupleship, which is a lack of a number of things, right? Possibly, and we're inferring a lot here based on one submission, but definitely lack of trust,
Yep.
right? Lack of safety. We've talked about both of those here. Also talked about this lack of dialogue, right? But then one that we haven't touched on, and we're not going to say much about it today for sake of time, is the lack of collaboration, right? And really coming together in a cohesive way to begin really addressing these issues, as
Yeah.
opposed to here's my camp, here's your camp, and then they're kind of rubbing edges against each other. It's much more of how do we take this on as a coupleship and collaborate to try to navigate, which navigate that which is an understandably difficult situation.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So kind of just to, by way of review, as we start to wrap up here, for a partner, in order for this to happen, now, again, we recognize with the caveat we said at the beginning, we know this is not a situation of your making or your choosing, but as we oftentimes also say in Dare to Connect, is we always want you to be empowered. We want to always point to your side of the street, not in terms of holding you accountable for the past or what got us here, holding you accountable in a healthy way for your healing, because you're the only one that can do it. And so part of this for you, and we know how scary this can be. Gosh, if my wife was on this call with how crazy I would get in response to this, she would really empathize with you. But finding your authentic voice is and growing in terms of both a skill set and practicing expressing that.
Yes.
A really critical skill set for a partner. Because one thing that is important and one thing that'll derail coupleships really easily here is, even though it is scary to share these things and talk about them, to be fair, we cannot expect our partners to change if we're not informing them fully of what you're needing, right? Of what the need is, where the shift needs to happen for you, what that looks like, because you are the lead guide in your healing journey. He cannot take on that role for you. And so even though he needs to be doing all of his work to create that scenario, there are pieces of this that only you can do for your own healing. And it is important that you're sharing as much as you safely can with him about, hey, what this looks like in terms of you supporting me in this journey.
Well, and one of the things that naturally will come up, I'll bet a lot of partners listening are saying, okay, great, Mark and Steve, I've done that. I try to express to him. I try to get authentic, do my preparation work to do that in a way that's at least, mostly healthy. And he doesn't listen, or he shuts down, or he gets angry. So what am I? I'm showing up, but he's not. That's where, as part of this partner's authentic healing work, boundaries come into place.
Absolutely.
Right? Is she setting boundaries around what? Not to control or force him to do anything, but boundaries that are providing a safety perimeter around her authentic wants and needs in this situation, clearly expressing them, saying what she needs, and then holding boundaries around those things. And if he decides not to show up on his side and lean in and come to her aid, then she gets to hold those boundaries with their consequences or outcomes, right? To protect her safety and authenticity. Then he gets to decide what he's going to do next. Yeah. And if he decides to spiral even further downward in his disconnection, what does she get to do? Put additional boundaries into place with outcomes. Right?
Absolutely.
Very big part of this. Absolutely.
I mean, the only way we make change is change. I know, like, sounds kind of like knit on a pillowish, but there is some definitely truth there. Well, as we wrap up, guys, in terms of how to begin addressing this as a coupleship, if you find yourself in a place like this, these things can be very difficult to navigate, especially the trust issue piece, because it kind of complicates the rest, right? But there is an element of a need to be getting comfortable with the uncomfortable here. Daily check-ins as a coupleship and practicing those. And if you Google good check-ins, or one format that we recommend would be called FANOS, or FANOS check-ins. Feel free to Google that. It's not something we came up with by any means, but a format that we recommend to many of our clients. That can be a great starting point for those. One of the best ways is to practice it. But also, there are also other really good forms for that as well. Couples therapy is a great place to do that. Individually, those can be practiced in 12-step groups. Frankly, I can't think of a better place. This is not just a plug because we own the company. It's because that's part of why we created it. Dare to Connect is probably the best place we could recommend, where you can get answers to questions dialogue about difficult issues. We have multiple couples in our program right now who specifically utilize Dare to Connect as a way to talk about difficult issues because we're the ones that are bringing up the subject matter,
Yeah.
sharing concepts, skill sets, ideas. It breaks the ice on the topic, so to speak, and then the couple ship through the homework assignments that we give every week. They're able to connect on that issue when historically it would have been like an atomic bomb going off if somebody had said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" So
a lot of couples who say, "Hey, we can't attend your live sessions that you guys do, but we actually sit down as a couple and listen to the sessions recorded, and
yes,
we'll pause the recording and use it as talking points." Right? The D2C sessions are a massive connecting tool for us as a couple.
only about 30% of our listeners attend our sessions live.
Yeah,
The majority of our people, because of just we have clients all over the globe, so they attend recorded all the time.
All the time. I wasn't going to say this, but I think this is an important thing to bring up as we close. As I got into really good, solid recovery and learning how to live in a healthy way and have a healthy relationship, I used to use a lot of platitudes to shut my wife down when she would bring up hard topics, right? Well, I love you. I wouldn't do anything to hurt you purposely. And then that was supposed to, assuage her and help her feel better. And then we didn't have to have the talk. When she started to really get good at her authenticity, finding her voice, speaking her truth, expressing her feelings openly, and she didn't quote, let me off the hook with those phrases that I would hurl at her. And she kind of said, "You're going to hang in here with me and hear me, and we're going to talk about this." I'm actually grateful to her sitting here today that she quote, "stopped letting me off the hook with that stuff." Because it caused me to make a choice. Am I going to lean in and sit with her in her pain and talk about the hard stuff, or am I going to continue in my avoid and escape and run away syndrome? And she said, that's no longer acceptable. That was one of her first boundaries with us. It's no longer acceptable for us to not talk, and for you and I to both share our feelings. This needs to change, or we have some hard choices to make. So, big part of this, getting it out into the open and coming together to start the dialogue in all the ways we've talked about today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as always, everybody, thank you so much for letting us into your homes, your hearts each week as we share these different concepts with you from our perspective. We so appreciate the opportunity and the kind words from all of you, as well as the questions that you guys submit. For immediate answers to questions, obviously, we'd invite you to check out the Dare to Connect program and grab a 2-week free trial on that at daretoconnectnow.com. But you are, of course, always welcome to submit questions to us through the PBSE podcast website at pbsepodcast.com. There's a contact form there with a little submit button at the bottom. You can send those in to us. We'd be happy to address those things that way. But we sure do appreciate all of you as we move closer and closer to what is our 5-year anniversary of this thing running. And just to appreciate all your support, your patronage, and for you being with us each week.
Yeah, and one other thing, I mean, imagine 5 years. This is what did we say this was, episode 245. You can go to pbsepodcast.com, look at the blog tab, and you can go into our whole almost 5 years of podcasts and use the search function there to look up all kinds of stuff with keywords, and go back and look at what we've said about a lot of things. We've also started to post things in social media. I think what do we have? There's the Facebook,
Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok, I believe.
TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. Look us up in social media. If you like what you see in here, like us. That helps us to reach a lot more people. And we're starting to put our podcasts now. We're starting to put a written transcript, kind of article format, in our PBSE podcast, pbsepodcast.com. You'll see the articles there if you want to read this stuff. And you'll also see those over there on our Dare to Connect Now website as well. So some of you like to read more than listen, and we're starting to put that into written form.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome, guys. Well, have a great rest of your week. Be safe, be well, and we will catch you in the next episode.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.